Grab a seat. We've got a pretty massive stack of notes
I
today.
really do.
And it revolves around a pretty unsettling question that I want to put to you directly before we even dive in. Imagine you're reading a grim procedural crime thriller.
Okay.
You know the exact vibe. Cynical detective, rain-slicked streets, that relentless anxiety-inducing plot.
Right, the standard gritty stuff.
Exactly. You finish it, put it back on the shelf, and then maybe a week later, you pick up a contemporary romance novel. Totally different emotional landscape.
One day.
Sweeping love story, aching vulnerability, two people trying to bridge this impossible gap. So two wildly different genres, written by two completely different authors.
Yeah.
But as you're reading chapter 25 of both books, you hit a scene that stops you dead. Because you realize you are reading the exact same scene.
And we are not talking about a vague thematic resemblance here.
No.
We're talking about the kind of granular, highly specific sensory details that make a scene memorable in the first place.
Like the exact food.
The identical food on the plates, the exact same atmospheric lighting, a mirrored cadence to the dialogue. It's the kind of literary anomaly that, well, it forces you to question the line between a bizarre statistical improbability and something much more deliberate.
Right, because my first instinct as a reader would be to think I was losing my mind.
Or that someone plagiarized.
Exactly, brazenly plagiarized the other. Our source material today takes us right into the heart of this exact scenario. We're pulling from a text called 5 Days in Venice by Fiona Collins.
It's a fascinating read.
It really is. It chronicles the deeply entangled, often frustrating lives of two highly successful English authors. We have Olivia Sackville, who is essentially the queen of contemporary romance, writing about the messy reality of human connection.
Right.
And then there's Leo Greene, the author behind these gripping, best-selling crime thrillers that feature this insomniac, chef-turned-detective.
And the primary mission of our discussion today is to analyze the star-crossed 20-year timeline of these two writers.
Yeah.
But more importantly, we are going to look at the psychology of their missed connections. We really want to decode how real-life memories,
The profound ones.
the profound joyful ones, and the deeply traumatic ones, how they bleed into the art we create, whether we intend them to or not.
Even when we're trying to hide them.
Exactly. We'll be looking at the defense mechanisms we build to protect ourselves from intimacy, the architecture of our memories, and the subconscious signals we send out into the world when we simply don't have the words or the courage to communicate directly.
Have you ever shared a profound, unspoken memory with someone? A single moment in time that shifted your perspective entirely, and you find yourself wondering, decades later, if they remember it the exact same way you do.
That's the core of it.
Does that memory still live in their head, completely untouched by time, the way it vividly lives in yours? Keep that thought in your mind. It's the engine driving everything we're about to explore.
To really grasp the gravity of this shared memory and how it detonates in their lives, we have to start exactly where Olivia and Leo find themselves when this literary bombshell is actually dropped on them.
Right in the thick of it.
We need to set the stage. The text places us in January 2018, Venice.
Yeah.
But crucially, this is not the Venice you see on summer tours brochures.
No, the imagery in the text is incredibly distinct. It's winter, there's a thick fog rolling off the lagoon. The vibrant terracottas and bright yellows you usually associate with Italian summers are completely muted down to these elegant, almost ghostly pastels.
It's very atmospheric.
The canals are damp, the air bites at your skin, and the only real warmth seems to come from the occasional flash of a lit brazier outside a quiet cafe.
And that winter setting is psychologically vital. The fog acts as this pervasive visual metaphor for the haze of their past. Yeah, a place of astonishing beauty that is slowly, inevitably sinking under the weight of its own magnificent history. It perfectly mirrors the emotional baggage they are both carrying. The source material specifically places them at the Palazzo Tesoro.
The weather-blanched plum.
Yes, described as this weather-blanched plum, a Gothic slab of a building sitting right on the Grand Canal. It has romance, certainly, but it's fundamentally melancholic.
It feels like a place where ghosts hang out.
Precisely. It's a place of faded grandeur. It provides the absolute perfect high-tension backdrop for a reunion between two people whose own shared history is full of faded grandeur, massive unresolved pain, and things left completely unsaid.
So we're in this frescoed lobby of the Palazzo. It's the first day of the Palazzo, an English writer in Venice's book festival. Olivia's standing there, and she is a tightly coiled spring of anxiety.
Understandably.
Because her publicist, Marin, has just casually dropped the news that Leo Greene is a last-minute stand-in for the festival. And worse, he's going to be on the exact same panel as Olivia.
Nightmare scenario for her.
Utter nightmare. She is literally trying to hide a copy of Leo's latest book, Midnight Echoes, behind her canvas tote bag so he doesn't see she has it. She's physically adjusting her clothes, smoothing down this oxblood leather midi skirt, just desperately trying to compose a facade of indifference. And then he walks in.
And in stark contrast to her internal panic, Leo looks utterly effortless.
Of course he does.
The text gives us these brilliant character details. His wavy hair is pushed back, he's carrying a battered vintage leather satchel, and...
Oh, I love this part.
This is my favorite touch. He is wearing a pair of unexpected, heavily tooled cowboy boots he picked up on a trip to Texas.
Naturally.
He projects this aura of easy, almost careless charm. But if we analyze this interaction beyond the surface, what's truly fascinating is the immediate defensive posturing from both of them.
It's intense because they haven't seen or spoken to each other in 3 years. 3 years of absolute punishing silence following a disastrous encounter in Tuscany.
Yes, the ghost of Tuscany is hovering right over them in that lobby. Leo says her name, and the text notes how Olivia struggles to formulate a reply that doesn't sound like an accusation, but also doesn't sound like a desperate entreaty.
It's a terrifying tightrope walk.
It really is. So what do? They immediately fall back into their oldest pattern, which is witty, rapid-fire banter.
Right.
Leo playfully interrogates her about her famous color-coded mind maps.
Oh.
Olivia zeroes in on his ridiculous cowboy boots, telling him he looks like he's lost on his way to a dodgy nightclub.
It reads as so light and breezy on the page, but knowing they haven't spoken in 3 years makes it feel incredibly heady. It's like they're fencing with actual swords, but pretending they're just using foam pool noodles.
That's a great way to look at it. It's a classic, highly evolved psychological shield. They're using their sharp intellects and their shared historical vocabulary of teasing to mask an ocean of vulnerability.
Keep him at arm's length.
Exactly. When you share a deep, unresolved trauma with someone, falling back into the rhythmic patterns of old banter is a way to exert control over a situation that feels completely out of your control. It allows them to engage with each other, to look each other in the eye without actually having to touch the live wire of their shared past.
But that live wire is about to get tripped anyway, and in the most public way possible. They move from the lobby into the Sala Grande for this Q&A panel.
Setting the stage for the disaster.
Picture this long table covered in heavy white cloth sitting underneath an enormous, unlit Murano glass chandelier. You've got other big-name authors there like Anthony Boe and Francis Holland, alongside the Italian organizers.
A whole literary elite.
Right, and the panel is going exactly as these things usually go. Authors pontificating, giving charming, rehearsed answers about their daily word counts and their muses. And then during the audience Q&A, a woman named Beth stands up.
Ah, Beth. The perceptive book blogger. She is the catalyst for everything that follows.
I have such an appreciation for Beth. She isn't some literary critic from a broadsheet. She's a swimming teacher from Warrington.
I love that detail.
Her handle is at BookwireGirly68. She wears these big owl-like glasses, and she reads absolutely everything.
Everything.
She devours crime. She devours romance. She's the ultimate cross-genre reader, which makes her the only person in that room uniquely positioned to spot the anomaly. She takes the microphone, consults her little notebook, and drops a bomb on the entire room.
It is a masterful exercise in narrative tension. Beth points out, quite politely but firmly, that she recently read Leo's latest gritty crime thriller and Olivia's latest romance, The Curator on Church Street, back-to-back.
Oh, boy.
And she asks them, point blank in front of everyone, why they both decided to write the exact scene into their respective novels.
The details she reads out, I mean, it's not just they went to an Italian place. Can you walk us through exactly what Beth found in those two books? Because this is the part that blows my mind.
The granularity is what makes it impossible to dismiss.
Huh.
According to Beth's notes, both Chapter 25 in Olivia's book and Chapter 25 in Leo's book feature characters sitting down to a meal.
Okay.
They both start with burrata. They both move on to bistecca alla fiorentina. The side dish, specifically, is sautéed cabbage with anchovies, garlic, and olive oil.
Sautéed cabbage with anchovies.
Yes, and for dessert, Both books feature characters eating chocolate gelato served with a single specific amaretti biscuit.
Wow.
And in both novels, the meal is consumed while candles on the table burn all the way down to a nub.
Wait, down to the side dishes? You're telling me they both specifically wrote about sautéed cabbage with anchovies?
Okay.
I mean, burrata and steak, maybe you could write that off as a standard Italian menu trope.
Sure.
But the anchovies and the cabbage, the single amaretti biscuit, you just don't accidentally conjure up that exact menu with those exact atmospheric details in two separate brains.
You absolutely do not. The mathematical probability of two authors writing in entirely different genres, independently dreaming up that exact sequence of dishes and sensory details is practically zero.
Right.
And this brings us to a really compelling psychological crossroads: the nature of coincidence versus the reality of subconscious communication. In The Room, Leo publicly plays it off as just a bizarre, funny coincidence.
Classic Leo.
He leans into his trademark charm, deflecting the tension by joking that he should hire Beth to be the detective in his next novel.
Right, and Olivia scrambles to deflect, too. She says she's never even read his new book, and he fires back that he hasn't read anything of hers since her debut novel. They are putting on a show for the crowd.
They have to.
They spar, the audience laughs, the tension diffuses, but internally. The source text makes it very clear that Olivia's heart is hammering against her ribs. She is deeply, deeply shaken.
Because she knows the truth. She knows that the scene in her romance novel wasn't just imagination, it was a transcription. It was based on a real-life, highly intimate meal she once shared with Leo. And sitting there on that panel, listening to Beth, Olivia realizes that Leo immortalized that exact same meal in his book, too.
That raises such a huge question for me. If they haven't spoken in 3 years because of some massive falling out in Tuscany, why would they both immortalize that specific memory at the exact same time? Is it just nostalgia? Or are they trying to say something?
From a psychological standpoint, when two estranged individuals write the exact same deeply personal sensory details into their public work, it is almost never an accident of the muse.
Never.
Art is deeply porous. It absorbs our unresolved grief, our lingering questions, our unexorcised ghosts. For Leo and Olivia, this meal wasn't just about the food. It represented a moment of profound, unadulterated connection.
An anchor point.
A moment they both independently recognized as a pivotal anchor point in their lives. By putting it into their current novels, 3 years into a painful silence, they are engaging in a form of subconscious dialogue.
Yeah.
It's a psychological flare sent up into the dark. It's as if they are both broadcasting on a dead frequency, desperately hoping the other person is still listening out there in the ether.
Broadcasting on a dead frequency. That is such a haunting way to phrase it. So how did they even get to this point? How did they end up with this shared history that is so potent it bleeds through their genre boundaries?
We have to rewind.
To understand that shared meal and the silence that followed, we have to rewind the clock. Way back, 20 years back to 1998, to look at the anatomy of their very first meeting.
1998 is a fascinating era to analyze through the lens of their younger selves. The text introduces us to 19-year-old Olivia. She is home in London from Canterbury University for the summer, and she is working this terribly mundane temp job at a media agency.
The details of her character here are just brilliant. She is wearing this kitschy, slightly ironic office blouse she bought on the King's Road, which is covered in tiny little printed office workers.
Very specific.
She carries a tiny black backpack that is fully equipped with practical items, including a miniature lint roller. She is highly organized, fiercely practical, and she harbors this slightly cynical view of romance, waiting for a hypothetical perfect love to arrive completely fully formed without any mess.
Exactly.
She's standing at the barriers at the South Kensington tube station, and her ticket is being rejected. It won't let her through.
And right beside her, wrestling with the exact same mechanical failure at the adjacent barrier, is a 21-year-old Leo Greene. Visually, he is her polar opposite.
Oh, completely.
He's wearing an unbuttoned denim shirt, he's cocky, he radiates this effortless, slightly arrogant physical confidence. The grumpy station guard eventually just opens the gate and funnels them through together, grumbling about them being a, quote, pair.
Which she hates.
Olivia, predictably, immediately rejects that association, glares at Leo, and power walks away. She is heading to a pub called the Cheshire Arms to meet her friend David.
The Cheshire Arms is such a perfect setting for this to unfold. David and Olivia are there for a Raiders Tipple cocktail night. The pub has this phenomenal menu featuring drinks inspired by legendary authors.
The literary drinks.
David, who is trying very hard to be sophisticated, orders a Dorothy Parker martini. Olivia considers a Bukowski Boilermaker, which is just whiskey and beer, but she opts for an Ernest Hemingway mojito instead.
Nice touch.
It is this brilliant, atmospheric, slightly pretentious setting for two future novelists to actually collide. Because, inevitably, Leo didn't just let her walk away at the station, he followed her.
He did. He tracks her down in the pub and waits for his moment. While David is distracted across the room, desperately flirting with the bartender, Leo boldly approaches Olivia's table. And what ensues is essentially a masterclass in instant electrochemistry.
I love that he doesn't even ask to sit down. He just leans in and takes a sip of her Hemingway mojito. It's such an audacious move.
It establishes his absolute lack of boundaries right from the start. But instead of being purely repulsed, Olivia engages. They start talking, and the banter is immediate.
It sparks.
It's rapid fire, it's challenging, it is deeply intellectually stimulating for both of them. Within minutes, they uncover that they both harbor these massive ambitions to be writers. Leo arrogantly declares he's going to write the kind of crime novels that actually make money.
Of course he does.
Olivia defends her desire to write romance, arguing for the validity of emotional narratives. They literally joke about getting married just so they could have writing offices at opposite ends of a massive house.
It's the ultimate literary fantasy. They eventually get backed into this hot, crowded, dimly lit corner of the pub as the crowd swells. And right there, against the wall, they share this incredible, life-altering kiss.
A huge moment.
The text describes it as the kind of kiss that essentially ruins you for anyone else. It's visceral. Olivia pulls back breathlessly and jokingly says, "Well, you have to marry me now." And this is where the narrative takes a sharp left turn. The ultimate sliding doors moment. Leo looks at her, suddenly sheepish, and admits that he actually has a girlfriend.
He quickly caveats it by saying it's a girlfriend of only 1 week, and he eagerly offers to go to a payphone right then and there to break up with her.
Wow.
But Olivia shuts it down immediately. The physical distance she puts between them is instantaneous. She calls him a player, tells him she wasn't looking for anything serious with him anyway, which is a defensive lie, and she walks right out of the pub.
But wait, if she felt that incredible spark and the relationship he's in is only a week old, why not just let him make the call? Why such an absolute, immediate rejection? It seems almost overly harsh.
That reaction perfectly encapsulates the psychology of timing and the rigidity of her defense mechanisms. The chemistry between them is undeniably real. Neither of them questions that. But Leo, at 21, is marked by a deep immaturity.
He's careless.
He approaches commitment with a casual disregard. He is literally willing to ditch a girl he's dating just because a better option appeared in a pub. Olivia senses that chaotic, unpredictable energy. She operates with incredibly strict, self-protective boundaries.
Needs that safety.
Her psychological framework demands safety and predictability. So when faced with this dynamic, cocky boy who clearly bends the rules, her alarm bells go off. She prioritizes her emotional safety over the massive risk of investing in his chaos. The connection is right, but their emotional maturity levels and their threshold for risk are completely mismatched.
She yells back at him over her shoulder as she leaves. If we bump into each other, we do. If we don't, we don't. She leaves it entirely up to fate. And in a sprawling city like London, the mathematical chances of bumping into someone again are practically microscopic.
Very slim.
But the universe apparently has a sense of humor.
Fast forward 3 years to 2001, we are at Gatwick Airport. The Gatwick encounter is a brilliant study in the concept of parallel lives. It highlights how people can orbit each other closely without ever actually intersecting.
Right.
Olivia's at the airport heading to a wedding in Cornwall with her sensible university friends. Leo is heading to the French Alps, specifically the resort of Maribel, to visit his newest girlfriend, who is working as a chalet girl. Visually, the contrast between them is stark, hilarious, and deeply telling of who they are at this specific stage in their 20s.
It's such a great visual. Leo is standing in the middle of a Boots pharmacy wearing the most absurd, premature outfit imaginable. He has on a thick cream roll-neck jumper, shiny red ski salopettes with the suspender straps dangling down his legs, and heavy Timberland boots.
It's ridiculous.
He is inside an airport in England, completely dressed for an alpine blizzard. And Olivia. She's standing near him, holding a plastic shopping basket full of highly practical, unglamorous first aid supplies. Plasters, Savlon antiseptic cream, painkillers.
It's a perfect visual metaphor. She is the eternal pragmatist, obsessively preparing for every possible minor disaster to maintain control. He is the flashy showman, dressing up for a part he isn't even playing yet, demanding attention. But beneath the visual comedy of the ski pants and the antiseptic cream, what's crucial here are the career updates they share.
Right, because they've both actually made progress on those pub dreams.
Exactly. They're both making significant strides, but on parallel tracks. Leo reveals he is writing brutal, highly entertaining restaurant reviews for the Evening Whisper. He's writing under the pseudonym Leo Greene because he's trying to sound like a 40-year-old distinguished cynical food critic rather than a 24-year-old kid.
And Olivia, meanwhile, is reviewing independent films for the morning show.
Which are sister publications.
Yes.
They're literally working within the exact same media ecosystem. They're orbiting each other in the exact same industry, advancing side by side, dealing with the same editors and deadlines, yet they remain perfectly, tragically out of sync romantically.
It's maddening.
This is a phenomenon you often see in highly ambitious people in their 20s. It's a form of adult parallel play. They are engaged in similar tasks in the same room, or in this case, the same city, but they aren't ready to actually merge their activities. The career acts as a safe substitute for the vulnerability of deep emotional intimacy.
And Leo is still fundamentally Leo. He's charming, he's still full of himself, he's still got terrible taste in music. He excitedly tells her he's listening to Phil Collins on his Walkman, and crucially, he still has a girlfriend waiting for him.
The timing is still wrong.
But there's a moment right before they part ways for their flights. They shake hands to say goodbye, and Olivia internally notes that his physical touch, his hand in hers, feels strangely like coming home. It's not a wild, chaotic pub spark this time. It's a profound sense of home.
That lingering handshake is enormously significant in their timeline. It indicates that the underlying connection didn't just survive the 3 years of absence, it actually deepened. It metamorphosed from mere adrenaline-fueled physical attraction into a resonant foundational comfort. It shows that despite her strict boundaries and his chaotic lifestyle, their subconscious minds recognize a rare, grounding alignment in one another. But, true to form, the orbit continues. He goes to the Alps, she goes to Cornwall.
I feel like we need to unpack why they are wired this way. Why is Olivia so desperate for control, and why is Leo constantly performing? This brings us to the architecture of their identities. If we're looking at how real life bleeds into art, we have to look at the soil they grew from. Because, listener, if you take a second to analyze your own life, how much of your adult persona, your specific anxieties, your quirks, your ambition is built as a direct, almost involuntary reaction to the environment you grew up in?
It's a fundamental question of developmental psychology, and the source text provides incredibly rich backgrounds for both of them to answer it. Let's examine Olivia's world first. She was raised in a ground-floor council flat in Pimlico, London. She was raised solely by her widowed father, Charlie, and Charlie is painted as this incredibly grounding, beautiful character.
I adore Charlie. He is a humble, deeply hardworking carpenter. He spends his days fitting out the interiors of local pubs. He isn't interested in wealth or status. He wears scuffed, dust-covered jeans, a simple navy V-neck jumper, and his beloved worn-out Gola trainers.
So vivid.
He's a man of few words, totally content with his quiet life, and he spends his evenings in the flat making custom skateboard decks for the neighborhood kids. He is pure, unpretentious goodness.
He is, but his unpretentious nature creates a massive psychological conflict for Olivia. She loves him fiercely, but she also feels this immense, complicated burden of class guilt. She went off to University at Canterbury, entered this middle-class academic world, and essentially shed her working-class London accent to fit in.
Trying to climb.
She is desperately trying to pull herself up the socioeconomic ladder into the polished media world, but every step up makes her feel like she is leaving Charlie behind.
There's that heartbreaking detail where he tries to buy him these posh, expensive, preppy scarves for his birthday. She wants to elevate him into her new world, but he doesn't really understand or wear them. He just folds them up. She feels like an imposter at her newspaper job, but she also feels alienated from her roots in Pimlico.
Exactly. And that friction defines her entirely. Olivia's meticulous organization, her color-coded mind maps, her precise to-do lists, her refusal to date unpredictable men, her emergency first aid kits, these are all manifestations of her desperate need for control.
To not fall back down.
When you come from a working-class background without financial safety nets or inherited industry connections, upward mobility requires a rigid, unforgiving adherence to a plan. Spontaneity doesn't feel romantic to Olivia. Spontaneity feels dangerous. It feels like the quickest way to slide back down the ladder.
Right.
That is the true reason she rejects Leo so harshly in the pub. Her strict boundaries are a survival mechanism. She cannot afford to tether her carefully planned descent to a boy who might pull her off course.
Now, contrast that quiet, careful council flat with the absolute circus of Leo's world. Leo was raised in a massive house in Wiltshire by a wildly famous, chaotic chef stepfather named Isaac Fu.
Isaac is a force of nature.
A legend. He started out selling high-end experimental food out of a literal tent in a car park to delivery drivers, and through sheer force of personality, built this massive, intimidating restaurant empire.
And his mother is equally intense. She throws these massive, boozy, sprawling dinner parties where Stevie Nicks is blaring from the speakers until 3 a.m. It's an environment defined by noise, excess culinary indulgence, and performative charm. But there is a shadow there, too.
A big shadow.
Leo's biological father is described as a flaky, absent missionary who essentially abandoned the family to float down rivers in Ecuador.
So, on one hand, Leo has all this wealth and status from Isaac, but on the other hand, he has this core wound of abandonment from his real dad.
Precisely. To survive and get noticed in Isaac Few's chaotic, larger-than-life ecosystem, Leo had to learn how to be the entertainer. He uses his easy charm, his quick wit, and his physical attractiveness to navigate the chaos and secure affection.
Always performing.
But beneath that cocky showman exterior is a profound insecurity about his own inherent worth, stemming from his biological father's absence. He masks his fear of not being enough with arrogance. Think about his pseudonym, Leo Greene. He adopts the persona of a cynical, older man because he's terrified of not being taken seriously as himself.
It's such a clear dichotomy when you lay it out like that. Olivia structures her entire life to avoid failure and poverty. Leo charms his way through life to avoid feeling inadequate and abandoned. But into Olivia's structured world steps a third major influence. We have to talk about Gillian.
Gillian is the catalyst for almost all of Olivia's ambition. She is technically Charlie's childhood best friend, but their lives diverge drastically. Gillian became an art historian. She is worldly, highly sophisticated, and eventually moves to Italy to work at the prestigious Guggenheim collection in Venice.
She is the cool, glamorous aunt figure. She buys Olivia beautiful art books, encourages her to write creatively instead of just practically, and sends her these romantic postcards from Paris and Lisbon. For a girl sitting in a council flat in Pimlico, Gillian must have seemed like a creature from another planet.
Gillian represents the absolute pinnacle of the life Olivia aspires to. A life that is creative, lucrative, and culturally refined. She acts as the aspirational bridge between Charlie's dusty carpenter tools and the literary world Olivia desperately wants to inhabit. However, Gillian's presence also deeply amplifies Olivia's internal guilt.
The push and pull.
It creates a brutal push-pull dynamic. Olivia wants to emulate Gillian's sophistication, but she feels that doing so is a betrayal of Charlie's simple, working-class dignity.
I can see how that socioeconomic disparity completely shapes how Olivia and Leo view each other. Olivia probably looks at Leo's casual, messy confidence and sees it as a luxury. It's the privilege of a rich kid who can afford to be chaotic because he knows he has a safety net to catch him if he falls.
And conversely, Leo likely views Olivia's rigidity and her obsession with rules as a challenge. He sees it as armor that he wants to dismantle with his charm. They're magnetically drawn to the qualities the other possesses, her grounding stability, his liberating freedom, yet they're fundamentally terrified by what those qualities represent.
This massive buildup of tension, ambition, and suppressed connection finally comes to a head in the year 2004. This is a massive turning point in the text. This is where the armor on both sides finally cracks.
It's a huge shift.
Olivia is now 26 years old, she is established at her paper, and she finally decides to take a massive, uncharacteristic risk. She actually walks right into the rival Morning Shout offices, finds Leo literally battling a jammed photocopier, and she bravely asks him out on a proper date.
It is a monumental step for her character. She is actively subverting her own deeply ingrained rules about safety and predictability. She initiates the contact. They agree on a date for the following Wednesday at a cozy Italian restaurant called Nicoletti's in Swiss Cottage. It feels like the stars are finally aligning. The timing is finally right. But life, tragically and brutally, intervenes.
The juxtaposition of what happens next is just devastating. The night before she is supposed to go on this highly anticipated date with Leo, it happens to be Charlie's birthday. Olivia goes over to the flat, gives him another posh, preppy scarf that he'll likely never wear. And Gillian is there too, visiting from Venice.
Right.
Gillian takes them both out to the Gielgud Theater in the West End. They are looking at this beautiful, intricate wooden stage set of Venice. But Olivia, ever the anxious professional, decides she needs to leave the play early to meet a film review deadline for the paper.
It's a classic manifestation of her drive.
Yeah.
The work, the upward mobility must come first.
Exactly, so she leaves. And while she is sitting on the tube, heading back to her flat to work, Charlie collapses on the stone steps of the theater. He suffers a massive aneurysm and dies instantly.
The psychological impact of that suddenness on someone like Olivia cannot be overstated. It completely shatters her carefully constructed worldview. She has spent her entire young adult life believing that if she was just organized enough, if she planned enough, if she controlled every variable, she would be safe. Charlie's sudden, random death proves that her control is entirely illusory. You cannot color code away mortality.
It's just heartbreaking. We cut to a few weeks later. It's the actual day of Charlie's funeral. Olivia is wandering aimlessly in the freezing, pouring rain in Green Park. She's wearing a thin, black funeral dress. She is soaked to the bone, and she is in such a state of profound shock and numbness that she is quite literally pressing her bare hand into the sharp iron spikes of a park railing, just desperately trying to feel a different physical kind of pain to override the emotional agony. And as she's wandering blindly, who does she accidentally walk right into on the path?
She collides with a man wearing a beige trench coat and carrying an umbrella. It's Leo Greene.
The moment she realizes it's him, she just breaks down, the dam bursts. She starts sobbing uncontrollably right into his trench coat, right there on the wet pavement. And this is the moment Leo completely shifts.
He transforms.
He drops the player persona entirely. There is no witty banter, no cocky smile, no attempt to make a joke to deflect the heaviness. He looks at the soaked, shattered, grieving woman, firmly wraps his arm around her, and simply says, "Let's go to the Ritz."
I'm so glad you highlighted that specific choice of location, because the transition from the freezing street to the Ritz is profoundly symbolic in the narrative. They move from the cold, unpredictable, punishing chaos of the natural world where fathers die suddenly and rain soaks you to the bone into an environment of extreme, almost suffocating luxury and control.
Total contrast.
The text describes the interior of the Ritz brilliantly. The heavy gold and brown decor, the warm light refracting through Lalique glass, the rich smell of camphor wood. It functions as an artificial womb. It is a manufactured space of absolute safety and warmth where the harshness of reality is temporarily suspended.
And the specific drink he orders for her there. He doesn't order her a polite cup of tea or a standard glass of wine. He orders a Churchill's Courage cocktail. It's made of bourbon, maple syrup, and white port.
A serious drink.
It's incredibly strong, surprisingly sweet, and deeply bracing. It is exactly the kind of medicinal, shocking concoction you need when you are desperately trying to hold your molecules together. And sitting there in that heavy golden light, drinking that bourbon, Olivia unloads absolutely everything. All the raw, ugly honesty pours out of her.
This conversation in the Ritz is the absolute crucible of their relationship. Olivia confesses the immense, crushing weight of her guilt. The agonizing guilt that she chose a work deadline over staying with her father, meaning she wasn't there when he died.
Yeah.
The guilt that she never truly, verbally expressed her deep pride in his working-class roots because she was too busy trying to shed her accent to fit into her media job. She confesses that she feels entirely alienated from Gillian, convinced that Gillian secretly blames her for leaving the theater early. She is completely, utterly stripped of all her carefully cultivated defenses.
But wait, how does Leo react to all this? Because historically, he's the guy who runs away from heavy emotional lifting. Does he just sit there and nod?
This is where Leo proves his underlying worth. He doesn't offer hollow platitudes. He doesn't tell her everything happens for a reason or try to fix it. He meets her vulnerability with profound, grounded empathy.
He really listens.
He actually shares his own parental wounds in return, opening up about the lingering pain of his flaky missionary father and the exhausting, performative nature of his childhood with Isaac. He demonstrates that beneath the arrogant food critic persona, he is capable of being a deeply grounding, safe harbor. When she says she needs to go home, he doesn't let her go alone. He takes her back to Charlie's empty flat in Pimlico.
The scenes at the flat are so strikingly intimate, but not in a cinematic, sweeping romance kind of way. It's a very quiet, domestic tenderness. He takes charge. He runs her a hot bath, and he specifically uses L'Occitane gel and lavender oil to purposefully mask the lingering smell of Charlie's Old Spice in the bathroom, knowing the scent would trigger her grief.
Such a thoughtful detail.
He sits on a hard wooden kitchen chair right there in the bathroom while she soaks in the tub, and they just talk. Softly, about safe, innocent things, childhood books, playing with fuzzy felts, reading Enid Blyton. Later, they sit on the sofa and drink cheap, incredibly sweet supermarket limoncello from the freezer.
It's a masterclass in co-regulation. He's
Yeah.
bringing her nervous system back down to baseline.
They ultimately end up sleeping together that night in her tiny old childhood single bed. It is described as passionate but incredibly tender. But, and this is the heartbreaking part, after the heat of it passes, Olivia lies there in the dark and cries again. Because despite the profound connection, she knows deep down that this is only what the text explicitly calls a temporary healing.
Yes.
She knows they have arrived somewhere incredibly deep, but she also knows they're going to have to say goodbye in the morning. Why? Why can't she just let him stay and be her partner through this?
If we examine this through a psychological lens, shared grief often acts as a massive, powerful catalyst for genuine intimacy. The normal, everyday barriers to entry, the posturing, the dating games, the fear of judgment, are completely bypassed by the sheer magnitude of the trauma. However, relationships that are forged entirely within the intense crucible of trauma often lack the sturdy structural foundation required for immediate, long-term stability.
Like trying to build a house during a hurricane.
Exactly. Olivia's in emotional freefall. Leo steps in and acts as a parachute. But a parachute is designed for surviving a terrifying drop, not for building a home in. Olivia, even in her grief, retains enough of her pragmatism to recognize that she cannot permanently tether her shattered, grieving self to Leo right now.
She needs to stand on her own.
She is hollowed out. She needs time and space to rebuild her own identity without her father. And she likely recognizes that Leo, despite his beautiful empathy in this moment, still has his own significant emotional maturing to do. The timing, once again, is devastatingly wrong. So, to preserve the purity of what they share that night, they separate again.
Fast forward 14 years of orbiting, near misses, parallel careers, and growing success. We snap back to the present day. January 2018, the fog of Venice. We are back at Harry's bar with the other authors and Beth the blogger, drinking overly expensive Bellinis right after the explosive panel where the identical restaurant scenes were revealed.
This scene at Harry's bar operates as a brilliant meta-commentary on the romance genre itself and, by extension, on Leo and Olivia's actual lives. Beth, still buzzing from her discovery, starts eagerly breaking down her theory on the anatomy of a perfect romantic character arc. She details the mandatory, sequential steps necessary for two estranged lovers to successfully come back together after all hope is lost.
Yes. She's basically outlining the exact plot of Olivia's books to Olivia. She lists them off on her fingers. Someone has to open a dialogue. They must resist being petty or jealous. They have to actively demonstrate personal growth. And someone has to make a profound, ego-less apology. And then Beth drops the absolute hammer. She says, but the most important thing is that a character must be completely internally ready to let someone in. All that messy stuff in the middle has to be resolved first.
It's phenomenal writing because Beth's literary analysis perfectly mirrors the psychological roadblock in Leo and Olivia's real-world dynamic. The stuff in the middle is notoriously the hardest part of any narrative arc in any real relationship because it requires genuine, often painful behavioral change.
You can't skip it.
You cannot simply rely on explosive chemistry or a profound shared history to sustain a partnership. You have to do the grueling psychological work to heal your own wounds. As Beth is speaking, the silence between Leo and Olivia speaks volumes. It becomes glaringly obvious to both of them that they are currently entirely stuck in the stuff in the middle. They have the chemistry, they have the shared grief, but they haven't resolved the specific acute trauma that drove them to stop speaking to each other 3 years ago.
Right, we keep circling back to this massive 3-year silence. We know what happened in 2015. We know what happened at a writer's retreat in Santa Luz, Tuscany. But what actually happened?
The text is incredibly, deliberately withholding here. It only gives us fragments. It references a deeply painful, unspoken incident. We know it ended with Olivia leaving Leo standing alone in a softly lit stone doorway while cicadas chirped aggressively in the Tuscan hedgerows.
Just that single image.
And that single moment resulted in 3 years of absolute punishing silence between two people who used to share everything.
It is maddening that the author doesn't just tell us. But I want your expert opinion on this. Based on everything we know about how these two operate, what do you think happened in that doorway? What could possibly cause two deeply connected people who survived the trauma of 2004 together to rupture so violently that they don't speak for 3 years?
If we extrapolate based on their firmly established psychological profiles, a sudden rupture of that extreme magnitude almost always stems from a direct, catastrophic clash of their core fears. Consider where they are in 2015. They are both highly successful authors now. The power dynamics have shifted from their 20s. They are peers.
Right, they're equals.
It is highly probable that Olivia's deep-seated fear of abandonment, that lingering, terrifying belief that she is fundamentally not enough, stemming from her complex class guilt and the devastating loss of her father, violently collided with Leo's core fear of not being taken seriously and his knee-jerk defense mechanism of performative detachment.
So you think one of them got too close, panicked, and pushed the other away?
Most likely. Imagine a scenario where Olivia finally demands absolute, terrifying emotional clarity and commitment. Leo, feeling cornered and terrified of failing her, might have deflected a moment of genuine vulnerability with a sarcastic joke or a flippant remark.
To protect himself?
To him, it's a shield. To Olivia, that deflection confirms her absolute worst fear, that he is not a safe, permanent harbor. Alternatively, perhaps Olivia's rigid, unyielding need to control the parameters of the relationship finally suffocated Leo, making him feel inadequate and triggering his own abandonment wounds. Whatever the specific spark was in that Tuscan doorway, it ignited their deepest insecurities simultaneously, causing a massive defensive retreat from both sides. They didn't stop talking because they stopped caring. They stopped talking because caring that much became psychologically unbearable.
It's not a lack of love, it's an abundance of absolute terror. That makes total sense. So now, sitting in Venice in 2018, having been called out by a blogger for subconsciously writing to each other, they have to navigate the fallout of that terror. And this brings us to one of the most poignant, quiet scenes in the entire narrative, packing up the past.
This is where the emotional reckoning finally begins. Olivia travels across the lagoon to the island of the Lido. Her mission is intensely morbid. She has to pack up Gillian's house.
Gillian.
Gillian is currently lying in a hospice in Venice, dying of complications from a recent surgery. And in a surprising twist, Gillian has named Olivia as her legal next of kin, despite the fact that they have barely spoken a word to each other in years due to Olivia's unresolved guilt over the night Charlie died.
And Leo, bless him, refuses to let her do it alone. He shows up wearing this ridiculous, oversized, furry trapper hat to combat the Venetian cold, and he insists on coming with her for moral support. They walk into Gillian's house, which is painted this striking spearmint color, and it is completely bare and freezing. The ghost of Gillian's vibrant, glamorous life is everywhere. You can almost smell the strong coffee and expensive lavender. You can feel the memory of her chaotic dogs running around, the echoes of her glamorous, boozy parties on the Guggenheim roof terrace.
It's overwhelming for her.
And standing in that cold house, Olivia is just completely crushed by the weight of her assumptions. She breaks down, convinced that Gillian named her next of kin not out of love, but as a final, punishing reminder of her guilt for not being there the night Charlie died.
But once again, in a moment of crisis, Leo steps in with that incredible grounding empathy we saw at the Ritz. He cuts through her spiraling anxiety. He points out that people facing their own mortality do not waste their final legal documents on petty revenge. He gently but incredibly firmly insists that Olivia must cross the water, visit the hospice, and find actual closure with Gillian before it's too late. He looks at her and says, "Go find one of them. Talk. Make it right." He's essentially forcing her to stop running from her guilt.
It's such a beautiful moment of tough love,
Yeah.
and the thematic mirroring happening in this scene is just stunning. As they are physically walking around this freezing house, packing up these tangible objects,
Yeah.
putting a half-used packet of Lavazza coffee into a box, wrapping up a dusty tapestry tassel, boxing up heavy art books about Peggy Guggenheim, they're simultaneously doing this massive, intense, emotional unpacking of their own baggage.
The perfect parallel.
And it really cements why Venice is the absolute perfect setting for this reunion. Venice is a city defined entirely by its water, its obscuring fog, and its slow, tragic sinking under the weight of its own magnificent, heavy history. It is the ultimate metaphor for Leo and Olivia's relationship. They are sinking under the weight of their own unresolved history, and they have to make a choice. Are they going to finally drown in it, or are they going to do the work to build a bridge over it?
The environment perfectly mirrors their internal state. Just as the Acqua Alta, the famous Venetian high water, periodically floods the ancient streets and threatens the foundations of the city, the high water of their past trauma and their massive miscommunications is actively threatening to flood their present reality. The central question the text poses is whether they have built enough psychological resilience, enough emotional infrastructure during their years apart, doing the stuff in the middle, to weather the tide this time.
I think that's what makes this story resonate so deeply. The journey of Leo Greene and Olivia Sackville isn't just a romance. It is a masterclass in the complicated, enduring nature of human connection. It's a powerful narrative about how the people we love, the people we tragically lose, and even the people we merely collide with for a fleeting moment in tube stations and airport pharmacies become permanently, inextricably written into the text of our lives. You cannot simply edit them out, no matter how hard you try or how many years of silence you enforce.
It serves as a beautiful testament to the idea that we're all walking palimpsests. We are human manuscripts that have been written on, erased, aggressively scrubbed clean, and written on again. But the old words, the original impressions, are still faintly visible beneath the new ink if you know how to look for them. So as we wrap up this analysis, I want to pose a question directly to you, the listener. Take a moment to think about your own narrative. Who are the characters that keep stubbornly reappearing in your chapters, despite your very best, most conscious efforts to close the book on them? What specific shared memories are so vivid, so deeply etched into the architecture of your psyche, that you and someone from your past could independently write them down verbatim, down to the side dishes decades later?
It's a heavy, beautiful thought to carry with you. Which brings me to one final, lingering question for you to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. Think back to that Venetian panel. Think back to the explosive revelation from Beth, the blogger, the burrata, the bistecca alla fiorentina, the sautéed cabbage with anchovies, the chocolate gelato with the single amaretti biscuit. If Leo and Olivia hadn't spoken a single solitary word to each other in 3 long years, following that devastating, terrifying fight in the Tuscan doorway, and yet they both independently published a book featuring the exact same highly intimate restaurant scene, was it really just a mathematically impossible coincidence? Or was that identical scene a deliberate, desperate subconscious flare shot high into the literary sky? Was it a secret, coded message hidden in plain sight on the bestseller list, desperately hoping that the only other person in the entire world who truly understood the menu would read it, decode it, and finally come back?
It certainly makes you wonder how much of the fiction we consume is actually just a desperate, heavily disguised plea for reality.
It absolutely does. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredibly deep dive into the source material. It's been a profound, fascinating journey to take with you, and we cannot wait to explore the next stack of notes together. Take care, everyone.